What is going on, guys? This is going to be another video on the wonders of building your own engine. Last video in this series, we went through and we balanced all of our rods. Today, we will be balancing the pistons. So, this is a little bit simpler than balancing the rods due to the fact that pistons don't really have two sides per se. They have one side, they're just one big piece. Everything that comes with the piston that has to be balanced. We have the piston, just the actual piston. We have the pin, and then we have the rings, and we have the little wrist pins. Majority of the time, your piston rings will be the same size, but you should always double check them. I already have all my measurements written down right here to save time with the video. And every single one of my rings were the same size. Every single one of the wrist pins were the same size. I mean, same weight. I don't really have anything to worry about. But if your wrist pins and all your rings were different weights, you have to take a completely different method on doing this. Because if you have differences in weight, you need to worry about that. Since all mine are the same weight, I really have nothing to worry about. All the clearances should even out. It should be fine. That's going to be hopefully either the end of this video or next video when I go through and show you how to use a feeler gauge and measure out all your oil ring, your compression, your oil ring, your top ring, and all these different clearances for all those. Only two things left I have to balance are the pins and the pistons. What I went through and did is I went through and measured every single pin and wrote down the weight, and then measured every single piston and wrote down the weight. And I'm going to use the method of balancing the pin and the piston together. Another method you can do is balance all the pins and balance all the pistons, and then you combine them, you shouldn't have a problem. But I just think it's easier just to balance once. I went through and wrote down all the pin weights, I went through all the pistons weights, and I combined the lightest pin with the heaviest piston and vice versa. Now that you have the actual weights of the pistons, I went through and I weighed all of the pistons and pins together, if that makes sense, as like a total weight. And when I got that, they were less than a gram difference. There was really not very much spread. Now, obviously the pistons are aluminum and you have to be very careful about how you remove material. These will always vary from piston to piston. But with my piston design, I can remove a little bit of material on the inside, just kind of chamfer right here. That's not actually getting it thinner, but just adding a little bit more of a diagonal cut into it. And make sure you're removing both sides of the piston evenly. You don't want an unbalanced piston. But remove both sides, that's called chamfering it. One of the options you can do is called chamfering it, and that's what that is. Another option you can do is inside the inner diameter of the pin, you can remove a little bit of material there on both sides. And like I said, my weights are less than a gram difference, so this is going to be a very, very, very light removal. You don't really need to remove that much material. And again, I'm going down to 1/10 of a gram difference between them, and then it'll be balanced. The method at which I'm using to remove it is I went to Walmart and just got the Dremel, and then they didn't have any. The HP Academy recommends a carbide bit. They unfortunately didn't have any at Walmart, so I had to get like a wood, metal, stone engraving kit, and it's gonna take me a little bit longer to go through and sand away metal with these things, but I'm kind of stuck. Kind of is what it is. I'm gonna go through and recheck all my weights. Piston 1, 479.1. Let's recheck. 479.1. Okay. That's with the piston and the pin together. Let's go on to number 2. Another thing you want to make sure you do is that when you weigh your piston, it's on. Give it a second to balance. I have 478.9. I'm going to remove it. I'm going to give the scale a second to reset. I'm going to put it back on. 479 flat. Okay, so I didn't get a consistent number, so I got to do a third weigh. Give it a minute to reset. 478.9. So now it's 2 for that. I'm going to do one more just to be sure. Give it a second to reset. Now this does sound a little bit tedious. 479 flat again. See, it's within that 1/10 of a gram. It's probably halfway in between it, and the scale's having trouble reading that 100th of a gram spot, or the 1,000th of the gram spot. That's making it round. But there, now I got 479 flat 3 times in a row. Let's go on to the third one. We have 479.1. I'm gonna let it sit for a second. Pick it up. 479 flat. 479 flat. So number 3 is 479. And number 4 looks like it's gonna be my problem child. 478.2. So I'm almost a gram off on all of those. 8/10 of a gram off on all of those. So in other words, that one's gonna remain the same weight, and all the other ones gotta have quite a bit of weight taken off of them. The way I'm gonna start by doing that is I'm gonna start with number 3, and I'm gonna start removing a little bit of material off with a wrist pin. Just a couple of rotations around, nothing insane. You don't wanna remove a lot of material, but you definitely wanna make sure they're all even. So after about an hour, we're done. Here's piston number 1. Let's go ahead and zero this out. That's piston 1, 478.2. Piston 2, 478.2. Removed a little bit of material. Piston number 3, 478.2. Removed a little bit of material. Piston number 4, 478.2. So we have all 4 of the pistons the same weight, and you can see where this is the stock piston, there's a little bit of a chamfer there. I added a little bit of more when I was grinding. So side by side, you can see not a lot of material is taken off, just a little bit of this edge is taken off. And I also did a lot of damage on the inside of this. But yeah, so now we can go ahead and assemble some of the rods and pistons. So one of the things I'm waiting on is a 4-inch micrometer. What that's going to let me do is actually measure the outside radius of this piston and then measure the inside of the bore. And that's going to tell me if I have the right clearances bore and piston wise. So throttle, I got a little bit of brake cleaner, a little bit of paper towels. I'm gonna go ahead and clean off these pistons. I'm gonna go ahead and assemble them with the rod. So I know I've labeled this cylinder 1, or rod and piston 1 is what I'm working with right now. There is no way that these rods do not fit. On the top of this rod, on the pin side, the small side, you can see how it protrudes out a little bit because these are manly rods. Well, these are Supertech pistons, and the clearance is just not enough. It won't go in at all. So what I talked to a couple of people about is actually clearancing the rod, because if you look at this, look at the rod, this top spot up here, that protrudes out, is supposed to just kind of disperse the weight of the piston a little bit more. And since these pistons are already rated for more than enough power, this rod's probably rated for more than enough power. So I'm going to work on trying to clearance these out, and I'm going to have them dropped off at a machine shop, because not only is that the wrong size, the bore size is the wrong size. So you can see the inside ring is spinning with it. It's because the clearance is too tight between the pin and the rod. So cool. I will follow up back with you guys once I have a solution to that.